I am Audrey Parker, 28 years old, and I still remember how my fingernails dug crescents into my palms as his voice cut through the elegant dining room. My boyfriend Jason sat frozen beside me as his father Thomas leaned forward. "Street garbage in a borrowed dress," he announced to his country club friends, pointing at me with his fork. 23 pairs of eyes watched as I carefully folded the napkin beside my untouched plate. The smirk on Thomas's face was worth memorizing. Little did he know who really controlled his billion-dollar deal. Before I tell you how I brought down his empire while maintaining my integrity, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever dealt with someone who thought their money made them untouchable. Growing up in the South Side of Chicago taught me more about resilience than any business course ever could. Our apartment was small but clean, with thin walls that let in both winter drafts and summer heat. My mother Dana worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat after my father abandoned us when I was 4. She cleaned houses during the day, waited tables at night, and on weekends she did bookkeeping for local businesses. I rarely saw her, but when I did, she was never too tired to check my homework or listen to my dreams. Education is the one thing no one can take from you. She would tell me, her hands raw from cleaning products, her eyes tired but determined. This became my mantra through school. While other kids played after school, I studied in the public library until closing time. The librarians knew me by name, saving interesting books they thought might challenge me. By 13, I was reading college-level texts on economics and business strategy, fascinated by how companies rose and fell based on decisions made in boardrooms I could only imagine. Our neighborhood was tough. Gunshots sometimes served as alarm clocks, and walking to school meant navigating territories marked by rival gangs. Yet among this hardship, I found inspiration in my mother's unwavering belief that I could escape this cycle. I graduated high school as valedictorian, my speech focusing on how determination could overcome circumstance. The scholarship to Northwestern University changed everything. Suddenly, I was thrust into a world where students complained about their parents buying them the wrong color BMW, where spring breaks meant trips to Europe or Caribbean islands I had only seen in magazines. My second-hand clothes and public transit commute marked me as different immediately. My roommate Jessica, a surgeon's daughter from Boston, initially viewed me with curiosity, as if I were an exotic specimen. "You really grew up in the South Side?" she asked, during our first week, both fascinated and horrified. But to her credit, Jessica became my first guide to navigating this foreign world of wealth. She taught me which forks to use at formal dinners, how to pronounce designer names, and the unwritten social rules of the elite. While others partied, I worked part-time at the university financial office, earned straight A's, and secured coveted internships each summer. Professor Alan Martinez, who taught advanced corporate strategy, became my mentor after I challenged his case study analysis in class. "You see angles others miss," he told me, recommending me for an internship at Global Sphere Consulting, one of the most prestigious firms in Chicago. That internship led to a job offer before graduation. Starting as an analyst, I quickly developed a reputation for thorough research and innovative solutions. By 26, I had been promoted twice, becoming the youngest senior consultant in the company's history, specializing in mergers and acquisitions for Fortune 500 companies. Success brought material comfort, but not acceptance. At company events, partners and senior consultants would often ask where I went to prep school or which country club my family belonged to. Their smiles would tighten when I mentioned my public school education and scholarship to Northwestern. I met Jason Bennett at a charity gala I was attending on behalf of Global Sphere. Tall, with thoughtful blue eyes and an easy smile, he was different from the other trust fund executives I had encountered. When I mentioned growing up in Southside, he asked genuine questions rather than making assumptions. He worked as a corporate attorney at Werner and Klein, having attended Harvard Law School after completing his undergraduate degree at Yale. "Most people here are boring," he whispered, as we watched donors compete to outbid each other for auction items they would probably never use. "They only know how to talk about their vacation homes and golf handicaps." Our first date was at a small jazz club rather than an expensive restaurant. He listened more than he spoke and never once checked his phone. 3 months of dating revealed a man who seemed to value substance over status, intelligence over inheritance. When he first told me he loved me, it was during a rainstorm that caught us without umbrellas, both of us laughing as we sought shelter under a store awning. "I want you to meet my family," he said after 6 months. "They have a summer home in Lake Forest. We could go next weekend." I should have noticed his slight hesitation, the way he quickly added, "They will love you. How could they not?" But I was too caught up in what seemed like the perfect relationship to recognize the warning signs. As I prepared to meet the Bennetts, I felt confident in my accomplishments. I had risen from poverty to become successful through my own merit. I had broken barriers and exceeded expectations. I believed that would be enough. I did not yet understand that in certain circles, no amount of intelligence, accomplishment, or hard work could overcome the perceived stain of coming from the wrong background. And I certainly had no idea that the man who would most strongly oppose my relationship with his son would one day find his billion-dollar deal in my hands. The Bennett estate in Lake Forest sprawled across 5 acres of perfectly manicured grounds. As Jason drove through the wrought iron gates, my stomach tightened with apprehension. The main house, a colonial revival mansion with white columns and expansive windows, seemed to judge me before I even stepped inside. "My parents can be a bit formal," Jason warned as he parked his BMW beside 3 other luxury vehicles. "Just be yourself." Elizabeth Bennett greeted us in the foyer, a slender woman in her early 60s with carefully colored blonde hair and the kind of surgical enhancements that spoke of considerable expense and skill. Her smile seemed rehearsed as she air-kissed Jason's cheeks. "And you must be Audrey," she said, extending a hand adorned with a diamond that could have paid my mother's rent for a year. "Jason has told us so little about you." The emphasis on little was subtle, but unmistakable. Thomas Bennett appeared moments later, a tall man with silver hair and cold blue eyes that assessed me with naked calculation. His handshake was firm to the point of discomfort. Northwestern Jason tells me he said, instead of hello, "Scholarship student." "Full academic scholarship, yes," I replied, maintaining eye contact despite the immediate knot in my stomach. I went to Yale myself, 3rd generation. Jason is 4th, of course." The rest of that first visit proceeded with similar veiled comments and probing questions. Where exactly in Chicago had I grown up? What did my parents do? Had I ever been to Europe? Each answer seemed to confirm something Thomas had already decided about me. During dinner, served by a uniformed staff on china that probably cost more than my annual salary, Thomas dominated the conversation with stories about his company, Bennett Industries, a manufacturing conglomerate that supplied components to the aerospace and defense industries. "We are finalizing a merger with Westridge Technologies," he announced, swirling expensive Bordeaux in a crystal glass, billion-dollar deal. "Will position us to secure the Thompson defense contract next year." Elizabeth asked polite questions about my work at Globalsphere, her eyes glazing over when I explained our approach to corporate restructuring. Jason squeezed my hand under the table, a silent apology for his parents' behavior. Later that night in the guest room, where I had been pointedly assigned separate from Jason, he apologized more directly. "They just need time to get to know you," he insisted. "Dad comes from a different generation. He will see how amazing you are eventually." I wanted to believe him. Over the next few months, I joined the Bennetts for numerous family events. Elizabeth's garden party, where she introduced me as Jason's friend from the city. Thomas's birthday celebration at the Chicago Club, where he asked if I felt comfortable in such surroundings. Christmas, at their winter home in Aspen, where I received a generic gift card while others opened personalized presents. Each time Jason assured me things were improving. Each time I swallowed my hurt and tried harder to win their approval. I brought thoughtful gifts, offered intelligent conversation, and showed genuine interest in their lives. Nothing seemed to penetrate the barrier of class prejudice. In March, during a company meeting at Global Sphere, I noticed a familiar name on the list of pending acquisitions: Westridge Technologies. The same company Thomas had mentioned was merging with Bennett Industries. "We have been asked to perform due diligence before Global Atlantic Capital finalizes their acquisition of Westridge," explained Sandra Miller, our division director. "Audrey, given your experience with similar companies, I want you to lead the assessment team." The coincidence seemed almost too perfect. I would be evaluating the company that was crucial to Thomas's billion-dollar deal. For a moment I considered recusing myself due to the personal connection, but I had not yet met the ethical standard for conflict of interest. The Bennetts were not my family, merely my boyfriend's parents. Besides, I told myself I would conduct my assessment with complete professionalism. That weekend, at another tense dinner at the Bennett home, Thomas mentioned problems with the Westridge deal. "Some investment group is looking to acquire them before our merger finalizes," he complained. "Global Atlantic Capital. Vultures circling what they think is a carcass." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Thomas had no idea that I was now directly involved in this transaction. Jason knew where I worked, but was not privy to which accounts I handled. "Perhaps they see potential you do not," I suggested carefully. Thomas's laugh was dismissive. "What would you know about acquisitions of this scale? This is serious business, not some little consulting project." Elizabeth quickly changed the subject, but the seed had been planted. I began to wonder how Thomas would react when he discovered my role in evaluating Westridge. The thought brought an unexpected smile to my face, which I quickly hid behind my napkin. As spring progressed, so did the tensions. Jason proposed a weekend trip to meet my mother, who now lived in a small but comfortable apartment I had helped her secure in a safer neighborhood. Thomas and Elizabeth's reaction was immediate. "You cannot be serious about this relationship," Thomas told his son during Sunday brunch on their terrace. He spoke as if I were not sitting 3 feet away. "The girl is intelligent enough, I suppose, but she comes from nothing. Your children would have no suitable background." "Dad, that is enough," Jason said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You are a Bennett. You have responsibilities to this family's legacy." I sat silently, my chest tight with anger and humiliation. Later, Jason apologized, profusely swearing his father's views did not reflect his own. But I noticed he had not directly contradicted Thomas's assessment of my suitability. He had objected to the comment, not the sentiment behind it. The invitation to the country club dinner arrived in May. Bennett Industries was celebrating its 75th anniversary, and Thomas had organized an exclusive event for major clients, business partners, and close friends. Jason insisted my presence was important. "It shows we are serious," he said, "that you are part of my life despite what they think." What I did not realize then was that this dinner would become the catalyst for everything that followed, that Thomas Bennett would finally show his true colors in a way that could not be explained away or apologized for, and that I would discover exactly how far I was willing to go to stand up for my own worth. The Oakmont Country Club stood as a monument to old money and exclusivity, founded in 1896. Its membership was restricted to those with both significant wealth and the right family connections. As Jason and I approached the imposing stone building, I smoothed down my dress, a midnight blue silk sheath I had purchased, specifically for this occasion, spending nearly 2 weeks of my salary. "You look beautiful," Jason assured me, his hand warm against my lower back. "Everyone will be impressed." The grand ballroom had been transformed for the anniversary celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements and gleaming silverware. A string quartet played softly in one corner, providing a refined soundtrack to the murmur of privileged voices. Thomas and Elizabeth greeted guests near the entrance, Thomas resplendent in a custom tuxedo, Elizabeth glittering with diamonds. Their smiles froze slightly when they spotted us. "Jason, wonderful timing. The Harringtons were just asking about you," Elizabeth said smoothly, steering her son toward an elderly couple without acknowledging my presence. Thomas's eyes flicked over my dress. "Trying to fit in, I see." Before I could respond, he turned to welcome the CEO of a defense contracting firm, leaving me standing alone. I took a deep breath and made my way to the bar where I asked for sparkling water. The last thing I needed was alcohol clouding my judgment in this Shark Tank. "First time at Oakmont?" asked a woman with an impeccably styled silver bob. "I am Margaret Whitmore. My husband Charles is on the board with Thomas." "Audrey Parker. I am here with Jason Bennett." Something shifted in her expression. "Thomas's son, how? Interesting. And what does your family do?" The question was familiar by now, the subtle digging for confirmation of my social status. I answered truthfully about my single mother and my scholarship to Northwestern, watching as Margaret's polite mask slipped to reveal momentary distaste before she excused herself. Dinner was served at round tables of 12, each carefully arranged according to social and business importance. Jason and I were seated at Thomas's table, along with the Whitmores, 2 banking executives and their wives, the CEO of Westridge Technologies, and a senior partner from the law firm handling the merger. "Harold, you remember my son Jason Thomas," said to the Westridge CEO. "Top of his class at Harvard Law. He is handling some of the preliminary work on our deal." Harold Blackwell, a ruddy-faced man with an aggressive handshake, nodded appreciatively. "Good to have family you can trust in business. Who is your lovely companion?" Before Jason could introduce me, Thomas interjected. "A friend from the city. Jason is being kind." My face burned, but I extended my hand to Harold. "Audrey Parker, senior consultant at Global Sphere." Thomas's fork clattered against his plate. "Global Sphere. The consulting firm." "Yes, for 5 years now," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Harold looked between us, sensing tension. "Fine company. They did some work for our London office last year." "What an unusual coincidence," Thomas said, his voice hardening. "And what accounts do you handle, Audrey?" Before I could answer, the first course arrived, and Elizabeth deftly changed the subject to the club's recent renovation. Throughout the appetizer and main course, Thomas watched me, with new wariness, occasionally whispering to Jason when I was engaged in conversation with others at the table. The breaking point came during dessert. Harold mentioned Global Atlantic Capital's interest in Westridge, expressing concern about how it might affect the pending merger with Bennett Industries. "These investment firms swoop in with no understanding of the industries they acquire," Thomas said dismissively. "They see numbers on spreadsheets, not the companies and people behind them." Some would argue that objective financial analysis provides clarity where emotional attachment might cloud judgment. I offered. Thomas's face reddened. And I suppose your firm's consultants believe they understand my business better than I do after 75 years? Dad Jason warned quietly. No, I want to hear this, Thomas insisted, his voice rising. Tell me, Audrey, what would someone from your background know about building and maintaining a corporate legacy? The table fell silent. Even the neighboring tables seemed to quiet as Thomas leaned forward, years of thinly veiled contempt bubbling to the surface. I grew up in a family that valued hard work and integrity, I answered, keeping my voice level. Those principles apply to businesses of any size. Thomas laughed, a harsh sound stripped of humor. Hard work and integrity. From the south side of Chicago. Perhaps next you will tell us your street gang operated with a mission statement and core values. Gasps rippled around the table. Jason put his hand on his father's arm. That is completely inappropriate. But Thomas was beyond restraint now. Years of prejudice, finding voice in this public forum where he believed his status protected him from consequence. Look around you, he said, gesturing to the opulent room. Do you really think you belong here? With people who built this country, who understand the responsibilities of wealth and position? My fingernails dug crescents into my palms as his voice cut through the room. Street garbage in a borrowed dress, he announced to his country club friends, pointing at me with his dessert fork, trying to elevate herself by attaching to my son. 23 pairs of eyes watched as I carefully folded the napkin beside my untouched chocolate torte. The smirk on Thomas's face was worth memorizing, that self-satisfied expression of a man who thought he had won. I stood slowly, dignity in every movement. Thank you for the illuminating evening, Mr. Bennett. It has been most educational. Jason half rose from his seat. Audrey, wait. But I was already walking away, my head high despite the burning in my eyes. As I reached the ballroom doors, I heard Jason's raised voice arguing with his father, but he did not follow me. Outside in the cool night air, I called a rideshare, refusing to wait for Jason to drive me home. As I stood there, Harold Blackwell emerged from the club, lighting a cigar. Nasty business in there, he said, his eyes appraising me with new interest. Thomas can be an ass when he drinks too much scotch. He meant every word, I replied. Harold nodded slowly. Probably. Old money often does. He handed me a business card. If you ever want to talk about what Global Sphere is really doing with Westridge, I would be interested in your perspective. I took the card, automatically tucking it into my clutch as my ride arrived. The evening had shattered something fundamental in my relationship with Jason and his family. But as the car pulled away from Oakmont Country Club, I realized it had also crystallized something within me, a determination that Thomas Bennett would learn exactly what street garbage was capable of. My apartment felt like a sanctuary after the nightmare at Oakmont. I kicked off my heels and sat in darkness, replaying Thomas's words and the faces of those who had witnessed my humiliation. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Jason, each more desperate than the last. Audrey, please call me. I am so sorry about my father. Let me come over so we can talk. This does not change anything between us. But it had changed everything. When I finally answered his call near midnight, his relief was palpable. I told him he was completely out of line, Jason said immediately. I have never seen him act like that. Really? Because it seemed like the natural conclusion to how he has treated me from day one. Jason's silence confirmed what I already knew. Thomas's outburst had not been an anomaly, but merely the public expression of sentiments he had harbored all along. He had too much to drink, Jason finally offered. He does not really think of you that way. "Street garbage in a borrowed dress," I quoted flatly. "Those words came from somewhere, Jason. Give him time to apologize. He will come around when he calms down." "And if he does not?" Another telling pause. "He is still my father, Audrey." I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. "I need some time to think. Good night, Jason." Sleep eluded me as I considered what the dinner had revealed, not just about Thomas, but about Jason, too. His defense had been half-hearted at best. When forced to choose between standing up for me and maintaining peace with his father, he had hesitated. That hesitation spoke volumes. Morning brought clarity and a new sense of purpose. At my desk at Globalsphere, I opened the file on Westridge Technologies. As lead consultant on the due diligence team, I had access to financial records, operational assessments, and internal communications provided by the company. Sandra Miller stopped by my office around 10. "The Global Atlantic people are pushing for preliminary findings by next week. How are we looking?" "Something feels off about their manufacturing cost reports," I admitted. "The numbers align with industry standards on paper, but there are discrepancies when compared to their supply chain documentation." Sandra frowned. "Dig deeper. Global Atlantic needs to know exactly what they are buying." As I immersed myself in Westridge's documents, an uncomfortable question surfaced. Was I looking for problems because of personal animosity toward Thomas? Was I allowing my professional judgment to be clouded by the events at Oakmont? That evening, I called Professor Martinez, my former mentor, who now served as an ethics consultant for several major corporations. "Alan, I need your objective opinion," I explained, outlining the situation without identifying Thomas or Westridge by name. "I am concerned about potential bias in my assessment." "The question is not whether you have feelings about the situation," he said after listening carefully. "Of course you do. You are human. The question is whether you can set those feelings aside and evaluate the facts objectively. And if I find legitimate issues, then you have a professional obligation to report them, regardless of how it might affect your personal relationships. Integrity means doing the right thing, even when it is difficult." His words stayed with me as I returned to the Westridge files with renewed determination to be thorough but fair. I would not fabricate or exaggerate issues to punish Thomas, but neither would I overlook genuine concerns to protect him or my relationship with Jason. 3 days of intensive analysis revealed troubling patterns. Westridge had been systematically underreporting workplace safety incidents to OSHA, potentially exposing Global Atlantic to significant regulatory liabilities. Their manufacturing facilities in Mexico appeared to violate several labor laws, with evidence suggesting they employed underage workers in dangerous conditions. Most concerning were indications that they had misrepresented the performance specifications of components sold to military contractors, which could constitute fraud against the federal government. Each finding was meticulously documented, cross-referenced, and verified. This was not about revenge. It was about uncovering the truth about a company that appeared to have built its success on cutting corners and deception, the very opposite of the integrity Thomas had implied I lacked. Jason called repeatedly throughout the week, his messages growing increasingly frustrated with my continued distance. When I finally agreed to meet him for coffee on Saturday, his relief was evident. "I miss you," he said, reaching for my hand across the table. "Dad was completely out of line, and he knows it." "Has he apologized?" Jason shifted uncomfortably. "He is still processing everything. You know how proud he can be." Processing his public declaration that I am garbage, I withdrew my hand, That requires processing. He built Bennett Industries from what his father left him into something much bigger, Jason explained, as if this justified Thomas's behavior. He has certain expectations about the kind of people associated with our family. And I do not meet those expectations. I did not say that. You did not have to. I studied the man I had thought I loved, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. If your father's deal with Westridge fell through, what would happen? Jason looked surprised by the change in subject. It would be devastating. Dad has leveraged significant company assets on the expectation of the merger. Why? I chose my next words carefully. My firm is conducting due diligence on Westridge for a potential acquirer. I cannot say more than that. His face paled. You are working on Westridge. Does my father know? He will soon. Audrey, whatever you are thinking, please consider what this could do to my family, to us. Dad has his flaws, but his company employs thousands of people. The implicit request was clear. Look the other way. Downplay any issues found. Protect Thomas despite everything. In that moment, I saw the full extent of what a future with Jason would mean, always accommodating his family's prejudices, always being the one expected to compromise. I will do my job with complete professionalism, I said, standing to leave. Just as your father would expect from someone of my background who values hard work and integrity. That night, I finalized my report on Westridge, documenting every issue with objective evidence while acknowledging the company's strengths as well. I included a clear assessment of the risks Global Atlantic would assume if they proceeded with the acquisition, as well as recommendations for addressing those risks if they chose to move forward. If Thomas Bennett's billion-dollar deal collapsed as a result, it would not be because of personal vendetta, but because his chosen partner had failed to operate with the very principles he claimed to value. The truth, I decided, would be both my vindication and his reckoning. The conference room at Global Sphere's Chicago headquarters offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a fitting backdrop for what promised to be a pivotal meeting. At the polished walnut table sat representatives from Global Atlantic Capital, our firm's senior partners, and my due diligence team. I had slept little the night before, reviewing my findings one final time to ensure every conclusion was supported by evidence. Sandra Miller introduced me to the Global Atlantic executives. Audrey Parker has led our assessment team. She has been extraordinarily thorough in her analysis of Westridge Technologies. I distributed copies of my report, a comprehensive document detailing 3 months of investigation. Thank you for the opportunity to present our findings. Before we begin, I should disclose that Bennett Industries, which is currently pursuing a merger with Westridge, is owned by the father of someone I have a personal relationship with. I want to assure everyone that this has not influenced my professional assessment. Sandra looked surprised, but nodded appreciatively at my transparency. The Global Atlantic representatives exchanged glances. We appreciate your disclosure, Miss Parker said. Edward Chen, Global Atlantic's acquisition director. Please proceed. For the next hour, I walked them through the report, methodically outlining Westridge's financial position, market strengths, and operational capabilities. Then, I turned to the concerns. Our investigation revealed several areas of significant risk. I explained, bringing up slides documenting the safety violations, labor issues, and misrepresented product specifications. Most concerning is evidence suggesting Westridge knowingly shipped components to defense contractors that failed to meet contractual requirements for stress tolerance. The room grew tense as I detailed how this could expose both Westridge and any parent company to potential federal investigations, fines, and even criminal charges. Edward Chen removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. These are serious allegations, Miss Parker. You are certain of your sources? Completely. The documentation is extensive and comes from Westridge's own internal records. The meeting concluded with Global Atlantic requesting time to review the full report. As we gathered our materials, Sandra pulled me aside. Why did not you mention the Bennett connection earlier? I wanted to ensure my assessment was completely objective before raising a potential conflict, I explained. If you feel I should be removed from the project at this stage, I understand. Sandra studied me for a moment. Your work has been exemplary. Just keep me informed if the personal situation changes. I had barely returned to my office when my phone rang. The number belonged to Harold Blackwell Westridge's CEO. Miss Parker, he said without preamble. I understand you presented some concerning findings to Global Atlantic this morning. My pulse quickened. Mr. Blackwell, I cannot discuss confidential client matters. Thomas Bennett is livid. He is threatening to sue Global Sphere for interference with his merger, says you have a personal vendetta. So, Thomas knew. The professional and personal worlds had collided exactly as I had anticipated. Any legal threats should be directed to our general counsel, I replied calmly. My report reflects issues discovered during standard due diligence procedures, all documented with Westridge's own records. Thomas says you are doing this because of some comment he made at a dinner party. Says you are using your position to retaliate. Mr. Blackwell, did Westridge misrepresent component specifications to defense contractors? His silence was telling. Did your Mexico facilities employ underage workers in violation of labor laws? Another pause. Those questions should concern you far more than Thomas Bennett's dinner party behavior, I said. Now, if you will excuse me, I have another meeting. Within an hour, Thomas himself called, his voice tight, with barely controlled rage. You vindictive little opportunist, he hissed. You think you can destroy my deal because your feelings got hurt. Mr. Bennett, I simply reported what the evidence showed. If Westridge had operated ethically, there would be nothing to report. You manipulated the findings because of what happened at Oakmont. Do not pretend otherwise. Every conclusion in my report is supported by documentation provided by Westridge itself. If you doubt that, I welcome legal discovery. It would only further expose what your merger partner has been hiding. His breathing was heavy on the line. You have no idea who you are dealing with. I built my company through relationships you cannot begin to comprehend. One phone call from me and your career at Global Sphere is over. Perhaps you should make that call to Harold Blackwell instead, I suggested. Ask him why he concealed critical information from you during merger discussions. Or was cutting corners on military contracts part of what made Westridge attractive to Bennett Industries? Thomas's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Jason was right about you all along. The comment landed like a physical blow. What do you mean? Who do you think warned me? You might be vindictive if things went badly between you. Who told me you had ambitious streak that worried him? My son knows exactly who you are, Audrey. The call ended, leaving me shaken. Had Jason really betrayed me that way, painting me as potentially vindictive to his father even before the Oakmont incident? I tried to focus on work, but found myself constantly checking my phone, waiting for a message from Jason that never came. By late afternoon, news had begun circulating through financial circles that Global Atlantic was reconsidering its acquisition of Westridge. The company's stock dropped 8% in after-hours trading. My office phone rang again, this time Sandra Miller. The Bennett Industries legal team has formally accused us of acting in bad faith, she informed me. They are demanding a meeting tomorrow with you, me, and our general counsel. Do you want me to step back from the project? Absolutely not. Your report is solid. Just be prepared for Thomas Bennett to make this very personal. The next morning I dressed with particular care, choosing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that projected both confidence and professionalism. In the conference room, Thomas was already seated beside his legal team, his face rigid with hostility. Jason sat beside him, unable to meet my eyes. Our general counsel, Richard Torres, began by addressing the allegations of bias. Global Sphere conducted its due diligence of Westridge Technologies according to industry standard protocols. Miss Parker's personal connection to the Bennett family was disclosed appropriately, and her findings have been independently verified by other members of our team. Thomas leaned forward. My son was involved with Miss Parker until she learned of our pending merger with Westridge. She then deliberately sought assignment to the due diligence team with the express purpose of sabotaging our deal. That is categorically false, I responded evenly. I was assigned to the Westridge assessment before I learned of your company's involvement, and I immediately disclosed the potential conflict to my supervisors. Jason finally looked at me, confusion evident in his expression. Had Thomas lied to him as well about the timeline? The meeting continued for 2 grueling hours, with Thomas growing increasingly aggressive as his legal arguments failed to gain traction. When Richard excused himself to take a call, Thomas turned his full attention to me. You think you have won, he said, his voice low enough that only those at our end of the table could hear. But street garbage should remember its place. This business world you are playing in, we built it. We make the rules. Before I could respond, Richard returned, his expression grave. I just received word that Global Atlantic has officially terminated their pursuit of Westridge Technologies. They have concerns about potential liabilities that emerged during due diligence. The announcement hit Thomas like a physical blow. His face drained of color as he understood the implications. Without the Global Atlantic acquisition, his merger was effectively dead. Westridge, now exposed as potentially facing federal investigations, would become toxic to other potential partners. This is not over, Thomas said, gathering his papers with shaking hands. I will make sure everyone in Chicago knows what you did. What I did, I replied, my voice steady, was my job. With integrity. Perhaps if you had demanded the same from Westridge, we would not be here. As Thomas stormed out, Jason lingered, conflict evident in his expression. Audrey, I never told him you would be vindictive, I swear. But you did not stand up for me either, Jason. Not at Oakmont, not after, and not today. He had no answer for that. With a last regretful look, he followed his father from the room, leaving me with the certainty that some relationships cannot survive when forced to choose between love and legacy, between integrity and inheritance. By evening, financial news outlets were reporting that Bennett Industries stock had dropped 15% on news of the failed merger. Thomas Bennett's billion-dollar deal was officially dead, not because of personal revenge, but because the truth had finally caught up to those who thought themselves above it. The collapse of the Bennett Industries merger with Westridge Technologies sent shockwaves through Chicago's business community. Within days, the Wall Street Journal published an investigative piece detailing Westridge's problematic practices, confirming many of the issues identified in my report. The Department of Defense announced a review of all components supplied by Westridge for military applications, and the Securities and Exchange Commission opened an informal inquiry into potential securities violations. Bennett Industries stock continued its downward slide, losing nearly 30% of its value in 2 weeks. Financial analysts began questioning whether Thomas Bennett's aggressive expansion strategy had left the company overextended without the Westridge merger to strengthen its position. I maintained a disciplined silence through it all, declining comment to several business publications that reached out. Global Sphere publicly supported my work with Sandra Miller, issuing a statement defending our due diligence process as thorough, objective, and conducted according to the highest professional standards. Privately, however, I weathered considerable scrutiny. Several partners expressed concerns about potential damage to client relationships, while others praised my integrity in a difficult situation. I threw myself into other projects, working longer hours than ever, determined to prove my value to the firm beyond the Westridge case. Jason texted, 3 days after the confrontation meeting, "Can we talk, please?" I agreed to meet at a small cafe, far from both our usual haunts. He looked terrible with dark circles under his eyes, and his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "Dad is considering laying off 200 employees," he said, without preamble. "The company is in trouble without the Westridge deal." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "I am sorry to hear that." "Are you?" His tone held a bitter edge. "You brought this down on him." "No, Jason. Westridge's unethical practices and your father's failure to conduct proper due diligence brought this down on him. My report simply exposed what was already there." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "He is my father, Audrey. Whatever his faults, he is my family." "And you chose him," I acknowledged. "At Oakmont, when he called me garbage. In the days after, when you expected me to accept his behavior. And now, when you want me to feel guilty for doing my job with integrity." It is not that simple. It actually is. I looked at the man I had once thought might be my future. "You never really saw me as your equal, did you? As someone who truly belonged in your world." His silence confirmed what I had finally accepted. "I loved you, Jason, but I will not apologize for refusing to be diminished by your father or anyone else." He reached for my hand. "We could still make this work. Dad will get past this eventually." I gently withdrew my hand. Number. Some lines once crossed change everything. Your father showed me who he really is, and you showed me who you really are. I deserve better than both. As I walked away, I felt a strange lightness despite the sadness. Some endings, painful as they might be, are necessary for growth. The professional consequences continued to unfold. Several clients requested that I be removed from their accounts, concerned about my involvement in the Westridge situation. Others specifically asked for me, impressed by my willingness to present difficult findings regardless of potential blowback. Global Sphere assigned me to a major telecommunications merger, a vote of confidence that helped quiet some of the internal criticism. Thomas, meanwhile, was not finished with his attempts at retaliation. Through industry contacts, I learned he had spoken against me to several Global Sphere clients and had suggested to other consulting firms that I was difficult and unprofessional. His efforts gained limited traction, given the public verification of my findings about Westridge, but they created a constant background stress as I navigated my career. Support came from unexpected quarters. Harold Blackwell facing his own professional reckoning as Westridge's CEO sent a brief email. "For what it is worth, you were right about everything." Bennett knew some of it and chose to look the other way. The price of doing business, he called it. More surprisingly, Elizabeth Bennett requested a meeting through her personal assistant. Curious and cautious, I agreed to meet her for tea at the Peninsula Hotel. "Thomas does not know I am here," she said immediately, looking elegant but strained in a St. John's suit. "He would not approve." Why did you want to see me, Mrs. Bennet? She stirred her tea slowly. To apologize. Not for Thomas, he must make his own amends if he ever chooses to. But for myself. I allowed his prejudices to influence how I treated you, and that was wrong. I had not expected this, and found myself momentarily speechless. Jason is devastated, she continued. Not just about losing you, but about discovering aspects of his father he had never fully acknowledged before. And you? Elizabeth looked out the window at Michigan Avenue below. 40 years of marriage teaches you to accept many things. Too many, perhaps. Thomas built a company and a position in society that I have benefited from immensely. But watching him destroy himself over this, watching how he treated you, it has forced me to question much about our life together. I did not set out to hurt your family, I said honestly. I know that now. She reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. Jason told me about your mother, how hard she worked to give you opportunities. I have made a donation to the scholarship fund at Northwestern in her name. It is not atonement, merely a recognition that talent and character come from many backgrounds. The gesture was unexpected and oddly touching. As we parted, Elizabeth clasped my hand briefly. Be careful with Thomas. He does not forgive easily, and he has resources you cannot imagine. Her warning proved prescient. The following week, a business blog published an article questioning my professional judgment, citing anonymous sources that claimed I had personal motivations for targeting Westridge. The insinuations were clear, but carefully worded to avoid libel. Global Sphere's legal team advised against responding, arguing it would only extend the story's life cycle. The stress began taking a physical toll. I developed insomnia, lost weight, and found myself constantly checking over my shoulder, half expecting Thomas to materialize. My mother noticed during our weekly calls. You sound exhausted, baby, she said. Is this still about that man and his company? Partly, I admitted, but also about figuring out who I am after everything that happened. You are my daughter, she said simply. Strong, smart, and too good to let some rich fool define your worth. Her confidence helped steady me. I began seeing a therapist who specialized in workplace trauma learning techniques to manage anxiety and establish healthier boundaries. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my relationship with Jason, rebuilding a support system separate from the drama of the Bennet family. In September, 4 months after the Westridge report, Sandra called me into her office. I braced myself for bad news, wondering if the ongoing controversy had finally become too much for Global Sphere. Instead, she slid a folder across her desk. Global Atlantic was impressed with your work. They have requested you specifically for their next major acquisition target. Even after everything with Westridge. Because of everything with Westridge. They value consultants who do not flinch from difficult truths. She smiled slightly. And there is something else. Bennet Industries has withdrawn their complaints against Global Sphere and you personally. Why would Thomas do that? Apparently, they are in acquisition talks themselves. A private equity firm from New York. Thomas Bennet is stepping down as CEO as part of the deal. The news hit me with unexpected force. Thomas Bennet forced to surrender the company he had built, the legacy he had valued above all else. It was not my doing directly, but I had set in motion the events that led here. Do you feel vindicated? Sandra asked carefully. I considered the question. Number. Just sad that it came to this. No one truly won here. As I left her office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dinner. Sometime. No family drama promise. New restaurant on Randolph Street. Adam. Adam Miller was a corporate attorney I had met during a deposition related to the Westridge case. He had impressed me with his intelligence and ethical approach to his work. We had spoken several times since our conversations, moving gradually from professional to personal. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine smile form. Tuesday at 7, I texted back, "And I will be wearing whatever dress I want." 6 months after the Westridge report shattered Thomas Bennett's billion-dollar deal, Chicago's winter had given way to a vibrant spring. Standing by the window of my new corner office at Globalsphere, I watched boats returning to Lake Michigan, white sails bright against the blue water. The promotion to division director had come in January, recognition of both my professional skills and the new clients attracted by my handling of the Westridge situation. The journey to this moment had not been easy. For weeks after the confrontation with Thomas, I had questioned my decisions, wondering if personal hurt had influenced my professional judgment despite my best efforts at objectivity. Therapy had helped me recognize that integrity did not require perfection, only honest commitment to the truth, as best I could determine it. My phone chimed with a message from my mother. "First day of retirement, cannot believe my baby girl made this possible." The modest but comfortable condo I had helped her purchase in Lincoln Park represented everything we had worked for her sacrifice, and my determination combining to create security neither of us had known in my childhood. I texted back a heart emoji and a promise to bring dinner that evening to celebrate. My assistant knocked gently on the open door. "Miss Parker, your 10:30 is here." "Thank you, Rachel. Give me 2 minutes." I straightened my desk, noting with satisfaction the framed article from Businessweek profiling rising stars in corporate consulting. The piece had described me as unflinching in her commitment to ethical business practices, even when facing powerful opposition. The journey from Southside to this office had been worth every struggle. My visitor was Elizabeth Bennett, elegant as always, in a pale blue suit that complemented her silver hair. We had spoken several times since our tea at the Peninsula, developing an unexpected rapport built on mutual respect. "The new office suits you," she said, accepting the chair I offered. "Congratulations on the promotion." "Thank you. How are you, Elizabeth?" She smoothed her skirt with manicured hands. "Adjusting. The divorce papers were finalized last week." The news surprised me. I had no idea you and Thomas were separating. 42 years of marriage ended with a signature. Her smile held both sadness and relief. The Westridge situation forced me to confront truths about Thomas I had been ignoring for decades. His treatment of you was simply the final revelation. "I never intended to cause such profound changes in your family." "You did not cause them, Audrey. You merely exposed what was already there." She reached into her purse and removed an envelope. "This is why I wanted to see you. Thomas has agreed to write a formal letter, retracting any negative statements he made about you professionally. His lawyer will be sending it to Globalsphere today." I accepted the envelope with amazement. Why would he do that now? "Part of our settlement negotiations," I insisted. Elizabeth's expression hardened momentarily. "Thomas cost you enough already. Your professional reputation should not be collateral damage in his wounded pride." "Thank you. That cannot have been an easy concession to win." Thomas is diminished these days. Stepping down from Bennett Industries broke something fundamental in him. He spends most of his time at his club telling anyone who will listen about how he was betrayed by Westridge. "And Jason," I asked, surprised by how neutral I felt about my former boyfriend. "Working in New York now. He refused to stay with the company under the new ownership." She hesitated. "He asks about you sometimes." "I think the whole experience changed him," made him question values he had accepted without thought. I nodded, glad to hear Jason might be growing beyond his father's influence, but feeling no desire to reconnect. That chapter had closed definitively. After Elizabeth left, I opened my calendar to review upcoming client meetings. Global Atlantic had become one of our most significant accounts, impressed by the thoroughness of the Westridge assessment. Edward Chen had personally requested my involvement in their strategic planning process, commenting that consultants willing to deliver uncomfortable truths are rare and valuable. That evening, as I helped my mother arrange her new living room furniture, she studied me with knowing eyes. "You seem at peace," she observed, "after everything that happened with that family." "I am getting there," I acknowledged, adjusting a framed photo of us from my college graduation. "I learned a lot about myself through it all." "Like what?" I considered the question. "That my worth is not determined by anyone else's assessment. That integrity sometimes costs more than expected, but is always worth the price. And that you were right about education being something no one can take from you." She squeezed my hand. "I am so proud of the woman you have become, Audrey, so much stronger than I ever was." "I got that strength from you," I told her truthfully. "Watching you work 3 jobs without complaint. Seeing you treat everyone with dignity regardless of their status." We shared a quiet moment of recognition, 2 women who had navigated difficult paths with determination and grace. The following week brought an unexpected invitation to speak at Northwestern's business school about ethical decision-making in corporate consulting. Standing at the podium looking out at students whose eager faces reminded me of my younger self, I felt a profound sense of having come full circle. Integrity in business is not an abstract concept, I told them. It is a daily choice to prioritize truth over convenience, ethical standards over expedience. Sometimes that choice comes with significant personal and professional costs, but compromising your values exacts a far higher price in the long run. After the lecture, a young woman from the South Side approached me, her expression earnest. "Your story gives me hope," she said, "that someone from our neighborhood can succeed without losing themselves." "Hold on to your integrity," I advised her. "It will be challenged repeatedly throughout your career, but it is the one thing that once lost is nearly impossible to recover." On a warm Saturday in June, I met Adam for brunch at a sidewalk cafe in Wicker Park. Our relationship had developed slowly over the past months, built on mutual respect and shared values rather than the whirlwind romance I had experienced with Jason. "I have news," he said, pouring coffee from the shared carafe. "The firm is opening a London office. They have asked me to head it up." My heart sank slightly. "That is a wonderful opportunity. When would you leave?" "In September." He reached for my hand across the table. "I was hoping you might consider coming with me at least to visit. See if you like it there." "Are you asking me to move to London?" "I am asking you to consider possibilities." His smile was warm but undemanding. "Global Sphere has London clients. Maybe a temporary assignment to test the waters. No pressure, just possibilities." The offer was characteristic of Adam, thoughtful and respectful of my independence. So different from the Bennett world, where women were expected to accommodate themselves to men's careers and family expectations. "I will think about it," I promised, genuinely intrigued by the idea. 3 weeks later, I attended a charity gala at the Art Institute representing Global Sphere as division director. The event brought together Chicago's business elite, many of whom had witnessed my humiliation at Oakmont Country Club the previous year. Now I moved among them as a peer confident in my professional standing and personal worth. Across the crowded gallery, I spotted Thomas Bennett standing alone by a Greek sculpture, looking older and somehow diminished in his formal attire. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, turning to engage the nearest guest in conversation. The encounter might have once filled me with anger or vindication, but now I felt only a calm acknowledgement that we had both been changed by our collision. Later that evening, a new acquaintance asked about my rapid rise at Globalsphere. I heard there was some drama with the Bennett family. Something about you tanking a major deal. I simply did my job with integrity, I replied. The rest is business history. And it was history now, a chapter closed but not forgotten. The experience had tested and ultimately strengthened my conviction that true value comes not from social status or family connections, but from the courage to stand firm in your principles even when facing powerful opposition. As spring turned to summer, I began exploring the possibility of a temporary assignment to Globalsphere's London office. My mother encouraged the adventure, secure in her retirement and surrounded by new friends in her condo building. Adam and I researched neighborhoods and planned weekend trips to European cities neither of us had visited before. Life had opened up in ways I could not have imagined during those painful days after Oakmont, proving that endings, even difficult ones, often create space for new beginnings. The garbage girl from the South Side had not only survived, but thrived, building a life defined by her own standards, rather than someone else's judgment. Have you ever had to stand up for your worth against someone who thought their wealth or position made them untouchable? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember that your value is never determined by someone else's assessment of you. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth today. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the people others underestimate are exactly the ones who change the world.